The Honourable Nicky Wagner.
Thank you very much. It will be a celebration the day that this Act passes. The Foundation for the Blind, in numerous iterations, has been working in New Zealand, supporting and working with blind people for over 126 years. I think most of us know where the original Brown Foundation buildings are in Parnell, enormous brick buildings. In those days, there was a residential facility, there was sheltered workshop, there was a whole lot of support where people lived on the place. And I think that really reflects the changes that have happened in disability over those 126 years. Originally, the organisation was named for the blind. It was all about looking after people who couldn't manage in the real world, that had to live in a sequestered regime, in residential places, in a place where normal people, where ordinary New Zealanders didn't come very often. And so I think it's really incumbent and actually a real celebration for this organisation that they can come to the stage that they're now becoming an incorporated society of the blind. It's no longer for the blind, it's of the blind. It's about people who have blind or low vision impairments who can live a life as any other New Zealanders, who can have more choice and more control over their lives. And if you look at the history of the 126 years, you can see how that has changed. And I do think we need to pay tribute to the organisation for advocating for that change, for cannibalising their own organisation in the beginning and becoming a truly empowering organisation for blind people. Right now, the services that the Royal Foundation of the Blind provides are to support people so that they can live a full life, to make sure that they can make the most of every opportunity that New Zealanders have in this country. And I think we've had some mention of technology today. Now, interestingly enough, the blind community have always been good at taking up innovation. After all, Braille was one of those early technologies that's allowed blind people to live lives as close as possible to an ordinary New Zealander in terms of reading and in terms of communication. And now we're seeing some fantastic new software, computerware that blind people can use. And to support them in adoption of technology, the Foundation is very strong in that area. There's a famous bit of software called JAWS, and it's fascinating because they use it in terms of software and computing, and what it does is it reads it really, really, really fast, and you and I probably wouldn't pick up the speed of the reading, but blind people are attuned to JAWS and they can speed it up, and it's fascinating to watch them using that technology. I think the turning point for this organisation, well, there's been several turning points along the line because the legislation has changed, but the 2002 Act was a turning point because that allowed them the opportunity to become an incorporated society. And even though it took until 2012 for them to do that, it opened the door for them to take that control over their organisation themselves. It was also the time that they changed the name to the Royal New Zealand Foundation of the Blind rather than for the blind. And I think this repealing is particularly important. It's important because it's given the organisation the opportunity to highlight the work they've done in Parliament, but also it wants to make it very clear that there's no confusion between having a statute that and gives them the independence going forward. And I think that the fact that they are now totally on their own, controlling their own destiny, looking after their sector and completely independent of Parliament is a really positive move. So I would like to say thank you to the organisation. Thank you for providing those services for 126 years. I'd like to thank the committee for the work that they've done to get to this stage. And finally, I'd like to say kia kaha to the organisation for the next 126 years. Kia ora.